Well, here we are with two exceptional ladies, Wendy Palmer, who is one of the founders of the Bay of Plenty Natural Cemetery Group, and Julie Andrews, who has recently joined the group. My name is Will Johnston, and we're just going to have I guess, a little bit of a chat, ladies, about natural burials, a natural cemetery, and I guess kind of what that is and the details around that. So, I mean, I guess the first thing is, and my question to you, Julie, would be to give those people who are watching maybe a little bit of a background as to what you're trying to achieve here.
Sure. So by way of an overview, the vision of the Bay of Plenty Natural Cemetery Group has always been to support the council to establish a natural cemetery in our area, because there are already 19 natural cemeteries around the country, including Whakatane, Thames, Rotorua, Hamilton, but there's none in Tauranga or the Western Bay of Plenty. So the intention is that the area that's set aside for a natural burial becomes a bush park, and that provides a living memorial to those who are buried there, a home for native flora and fauna, and just a beautiful place for friends and family to visit. And the core principle is that the bodies return to the earth for the benefit of the environment. There's nothing introduced to interfere or pollute with or be pollution for those environmental processes. And when it's buried naturally, it's placed in a shallow plot in an environmentally friendly coffin. Compost is placed with the body. This is getting into the nitty-gritty, and then it's planted out. So yeah, there's actually a video clip that we'd like to share where Jeanette Fitzsimons talks about what they've been doing in Thames with the natural burial group there. It was obviously recorded a couple of years ago before she died, and it was so fortunate that she was able, it was established in time for her to be buried there. So Hannah's going to actually share that video, which is right at the start. Hannah.
We have, and let me tell you, we do have Hannah. I have to give Hannah a shout out. She is technically running this for 3 slightly technically inept. So we very much appreciate Hannah right now. Let's have a look at this video.
We do appreciate it, Hannah.
I've always felt that we come from the earth and we want to go back to the earth in the most natural way we can. I hate the idea of my body, which I've tried to look after in a natural way all my life, being filled up with highly toxic chemicals for embalming. I can't see the point of that. And I love the idea of creating a place that's full of native trees and little tracks and a good place for birds and other wildlife, so that relatives and other people can just come and walk through the graves and under the trees and enjoy the views out in every direction.
Wow, that is, like actually while you were doing the introduction, and wasn't Jeanette Fitzsimons an amazing human, by the way, just as an aside, an absolutely amazing human. Almost bizarre to me that Tauranga in the Western Bay doesn't have a natural cemetery, and this hasn't been something that's sort of been gotten onto a lot earlier than it has. But there is some good news in that respect, right, when it comes to the Western Bay of Plenty District Council.
There's some great news, because as a result of submissions, actually, so it is always worthwhile putting submissions into council. The Western Bay of Plenty District Council has provided for a natural cemetery in its long-term plan.
Cool.
Yeah. So the area that earmarked is the existing Te Puke Cemetery at the back of that. So it's a beautiful piece of land. It runs from sort of the Rose Garden, which is at the back of the Te Puke Cemetery, and it's maybe 6 hectares, and it goes and adjoins dockland where there's a stream. So they've got this vision for a meandering path through native plantings, and they're going to develop a plan for a landscape plan for consultation. But before they do that, they're actually doing a great thing by visiting all the existing, most of the existing natural cemeteries around the country, and they've actually already visited 3. So the contact that we've had with them has been fantastic. You know, they're really on board with it. They're really keen. They want to take sort of the best of all the sites around the place and do a really good job at Te Puke. It will be developed gradually. Like at the moment it's grazed, and it will just be developed as kind of the need arises. There'll be the path put in and so on just for vehicle access, but it is true that the numbers tend to be relatively small for natural burials, and so it does take a while to before you need a lot of land.
Yeah, I mean, but look, it is at the very least exciting that we're at the start of something here in the Bay of Plenty, in the Western Bay, and good on the council for going around other ones and just ripping off the best bits of them. I think that's a good idea. Like, that's great. That's great for us here, isn't it?
It is.
Hey, so obviously the point of this as well is to raise a little bit of awareness about what a natural burial is and the things around that kind of thing. Are there a few key points you can take me through from someone from outside of the sphere that you guys are in as to what a natural burial is and a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
It's this, you know.
oh, Wendy,
You have
You've got key points.
Yeah, I did this long ago, but the no embalming is a big one.
because of course embalming preserves the body.
And we don't want to do that. We want it to break down readily.
Yeah, we want to speed that process up.
And no artificial toxic, you know, chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Burials in the active upper soil layers where there's more microbiology. So
Okay.
it's
So
less
think
than
of
a
your-
metre.
Think of your compost heap.
Yeah, it's sort of 700 mils down to a metre in that area usually.
Right.
And usually native trees, we think we'll be doing like others, just the native trees. And the other one is about the caskets or the shroud being sustainably grown and organic.
Or
Not
natural
nat-
fibre.
People
And-
bamboo or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
anything like that.
So all of the clothing and the materials on the casket, which actually includes the casket lining and natural fibre only. Obviously, you don't have handles on a casket that are
No
metal,
hardware
all that
or
kind of thing.
plastic.
No hardware.
Yeah.
And there are some pretty cool ones as well, because that's the other side of things, you know, like you can if you're having a natural burial, you can still have a cool casket.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
actually something that's quite important to people.
Yeah, like there's actually coffin clubs. Did you know?
Are there?
You
Yeah.
can make your own coffin.
The closest ones we've got are Tauranga and Rotorua. Yeah, and
Oh,
there are
God, that's
flats.
so cool.
I've seen flax coffins.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you've got to have good lining, maybe wool or fleece or something to stop seepage.
Yeah.
Can't have plastic.
And cardboard, go wild with all painting your cardboard casket.
Cool. So wait, hold on. So at a funeral, like a casket club. So I'm learning something right now. So at a casket club, I mean, that would
Coffin
be
club, they call
coffin
it.
club. Sorry,
club,
coffin
yeah.
club. It's like the coffee club, but for a long.
Oh look, I should put a link. I should put a link on the listing to the video that the Rotorua Coffin Club have produced. It's a musical, and they're singing about their coffins, and
Oh, God.
it's really fun. So I'll remember to do that.
Yeah, that's so good. And that can be for anyone, right? Like that could be somebody young who just wants to have something prepared. That could be somebody with a terminal illness who is embracing that and going through those kind of things. And I guess you could do that together, right? As family and friends and those kind of things, like as part of a process.
Even if you don't have a natural burial, you can take some of these things anyway, no matter what you're doing. You don't, it doesn't all just fit within a natural burial. It's required for a natural burial that you have these things. But if you choose another method of disposing your body, then you can do these things too.
You can
Yeah,
take
we're
some of
about-
these things.
Yeah, we're about options.
Yeah.
We want this because we believe this is the best option, so that's why we're putting it forward.
For us anyway. Yeah.
So now, I mean, it's been a little bit answered by in Jeanette's video before, but feel free to talk more to it. Why do you want a natural burial?
Well, I want a natural burial. Yeah, same points as Jeanette, really. Well, I'm an organic gardener for a start. I'm right into, soil microbiology and low carbon footprint in my life. So this is just as in life, so in death for me.
Yep.
And I think it is going back to the natural order of things, isn't it? Really, it's where living things die and then return to the earth in a natural kind of simple way. And like Jeanette and pretty much everyone else, I love trees, plants, birds, nature, and composting my body feels like a life-giving thing to do.
And look, I mean, I hate to quote the Lion King, but it's the circle of life, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just rolling through that circle of life.
Yeah.
And include why not I guess a natural question from there would be, why not a cremation? Because that's sort of, that's essentially ashes and returning to the earth and those kind of things, or a standard burial. What's the real difference there? Why not that?
The difference is that cremation uses a lot of energy, and that produces carbon dioxide emissions, and standard burials require a lot of maintenance. The graveyards, the normal cemetery, mowing all the time, and it doesn't look good if it's not maintained. But that's a big one for me. Maintenance and mowing and all that. There's more carbon emissions.
And it's just, in this case, the alternative is actually creating the bush area. And we need, bush areas, and they're beautiful places to be. So actually, we do have another clip from that same video we showed earlier with the guy speaking about maintenance in cemeteries. So Hannah's got that all sorted.
No worries, guys. I'll share that with you now. So make sure we get to the right. Make sure we can all hear it.
Oh yeah, it's just the volume on the video.
Thanks for that, Will.
It's all right. Hey, I'm not as technically inept as I thought I was. Here we go. Yeah.
Body to add to that.
Yeah, I think what most people don't take into account with the native burial ground, once people are buried and once it is planted, it's pretty much totally maintenance free, and it just creates a beautiful forest eventually and a beautiful park, while your traditional burial grounds, you have to keep on maintaining year after year after year after year with sprays and mowers. The maintenance of a traditional burial ground, which is actually very polluting.
The process for being buried within the natural burial area, we ask.
Cool.
Yeah. Sprays, that's the other thing that is done. Yeah. We don't need herbicides.
And it is, like, I do like that idea of creating a natural park. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a park, it's a bushland, it's something that people can go and enjoy. And look, we'll get a little bit more on the specifics of that shortly, but I want to circle back to cost, because that's something that people always think about, right? Compared to cremations and a traditional burial in that way, what's the difference in cost there?
Yeah, this is a major factor for people, obviously.
So a natural burial and a standard burial are similar in cost, currently about 3,000 to 4,500. They do vary amongst councils. And the cremation's only 700. So it does, we have a really high in Australia percentage of cremations compared to UK and US.
Compared to them, but I was actually reading that in Japan, cremations make up about 99%. They're really, the percentage is really high in Asia. I think partly cultural, they don't have the land. So in certain countries, cremations are really high. And other ones, like, as you say, the UK, burials are probably about 50-50.
Right.
So
And you can save money by, well, you can save cost and trees by not being embalmed, not having the fancy casket with all the hardware, and not having a headstone. You know, a tree is, the trees will be provided. Probably we're going to have, others have got a list, probably have a list of about 20 trees that we think will be suitable for this environment, our climate. And
but the councillor is going to come up with the landscaping plan. So yeah, you won't necessarily have a tree per plot. In Wellington, you can actually choose a specific tree. But one of the problems with that is, well, I don't think it's been a problem for Wellington, to be fair, but a landscaping plan just makes it a whole lot easier for the parks and reserves people. They can come up with a plan, and then they can have big trees, because you do get problems with bigger trees shading out the smaller trees, and the smaller trees not thriving and dying and so on. And also just from a sort of natural regeneration point of view and so on, it's easier to have a landscaping plan. But just going back to the
shroud, what do you say about the shroud?
Yes.
So you don't have to have a casket even, you can have a shroud, and understand you lay the person in the shroud on a plank that will rot as well. And there's a business, New Zealand business, Ake Ake, that are producing shrouds from about 400 each. All sizes, and just back to the natural fibre for the shroud. But you a little bit about the cremation.
Yeah, so going back to the costs, you know, a cremation is definitely a lot cheaper at about $700 than a natural burial, or any kind of burial, at around $3,000. And as Wendy says, you know, you can save on those other areas. Actually, an interesting piece of history is that cremation was made legal in 1882
in New Zealand.
And the first cremation took place in 1909. So, you know, interesting.
I thought it would have been a lot older than that. Do you know what I mean? I thought, you know.
Yeah, and so you can actually, if it's shown that the estate of the person who's died can't pay, you may be able to get a funeral grant of about $2,000 from working income. Okay. But that's, you just have to look into the ins and outs of that. And yeah, there are lots of reasons why people might not choose a natural burial. There's people who have purchased partner plots. You know, partner plots aren't actually available with natural burials, because once you've planted trees, you can't then disturb the roots by digging another grave. So it's one burial per.
And that's the point, really, isn't it? You know, I mean, you're returning to the earth. You're part of something, and I guess kind of naturally, it just sort of, you know, it happens where it happens. I guess actually my question on that, and we did touch on it a little bit earlier as well, is we talked about no headstone, right? So there is obviously an opportunity for somebody to mark the grave in some way. So that's the first part of the question in terms of what is that way that they can do that. And then how do they find, if someone wanted to find their loved one in a natural burial, natural cemetery, how would they do that?
How would they find them? Well, we've got, we haven't decided our own rules, but from any marker, it's got to be able to break down or be natural. Yeah, natural. And Thames have got stones. You can engrave stones, but I've got a picture of the
Wellington
this is
untreated timber.
This is this is the guy. This is the family that started the Wellington one.
Wow.
This is an article from 2009. See that wooden marker?
Yeah.
And it can actually be inscribed with something along the side or on the top.
Cool.
And of course, there's always, with all burials, I think, records made of the GPS reading, basically.
They take the GPS
Along with it.
coordinates, and that's then available through a cemetery tracking system.
Yeah.
So you can always know exactly where the body is buried.
Yeah, so that's good as well. I mean, and with the advances of technology, that's just going to get more accurate and more easy as well, in terms of being able to find that. So I do quite like that sort of juxtaposition of a natural burial, but also being able to be found by GPS. Like that's kind of like the old and the new. Do you know what I mean? Like working well together. I think that's that's quite important.
Well, just on that point, Hamilton have biodegradable markers that they actually provide. The Western Bay of Plenty District Council is going to again look at those sorts of things, provide for something in the landscaping plan, and then that landscaping plan is going out for consultation, so people will get a bit of a say on that.
Yeah. So look, in terms of following a little along the natural process, so there's no embalming, right? So does that mean, because embalming will mean that the body will be able to be above ground, for want of a better term, for longer. Does that mean there's a certain time or less time that you have with a natural burial?
Yeah, so natural burial sites have a limit of about 3 days. But it can vary depending on the circumstances, for example, the state of the body and what season it is. Also, there are cooling pads you can buy or hire, that lay under the body to keep the body cool and last longer. And like I said before, ice has been used in the past also, maybe on Marae, that's been more common where they do keep the body longer.
Or they bury on the third day with the tongue, don't they? So that's the third. But Pacific. Okay. 7 days. So
there is options there. There is.
Also, I've known people to wait longer, for people to come from overseas or from around the country, getting the family together so they keep the body cold.
I think these cooling pads are a bit of a game changer because especially for keeping the body at home.
Yeah, and I think so, as you say, in a lot of cultures that is important, and nice to see that it is an option as well. Now we've briefly touched on the headstones, and we talked about like a wooden one, but you can have an actual just a stone, right?
Depends what they put in the landscaping plan. Well,
okay, cool, all right.
I've started off thinking no markers, just a GPS reading. That's how you can get that. Right, but we'll wait and see what people want.
That's right. Because when you think of a grieving family, there's something special, I think, about putting a marker in that spot.
Yeah, for sure. And look, in terms of the GPS, you're always going to know where that person is. And look, and following down those natural things, we've talked about trees potentially being planted, and that's all part of the plan. And there may be an opportunity down the track to be able to choose a tree like they do in Wellington. But in terms of a partner plot, because I'm just trying to think about things in cemeteries that people think about, right? And they think about a partner plot, and can I get buried next to my partner, and what's the go there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you just have to get the next available plot, because that's the only way that the parks and reserves can manage the logistics with all the tree roots that are already there and the way that they're establishing the bush.
And it's sort of the point of it, isn't it? Like that's that you're there and you're part of something. And I guess the other thing that people want to know is, will that land be there in perpetuity forever?
Yeah. So other councils have managed that. The councils have got legal mechanisms for that, and I understand that the Western Bay of Plenty District Council will be the same.
Yeah, cool. So it's
that it's going to be around for a long time. That's what people want, is a bush park that's going to be there and it's going to naturally regenerate.
Yeah, that's great. So in terms of pre-planning, what can be done there?
I think the most important thing is to discuss it with family, your wishes with family, and most importantly with the executors of your will.
Mm.
You know, having a will is important.
Yeah.
And just discussing it and just knowing what to expect. So you can't reserve plots, but maybe that the council allows you to pre-purchase them. And so they, as we've discussed, they're available on, you know, they're on a next available basis. There is some notice required for burials, and there's warrants and various things like that. The funeral director can guide you through that. I think more people these days are choosing to do their own. So if you're going intending to do it yourself, then you really do need to do your homework before the person dies, so that you know exactly what's needed.
But you can.
But you can do that.
Yeah.
And actually, there's also other options. I know very little about it, but I have heard that there's a training program for funeral guides in Rotorua. Ngā Poharinga, I think it is, for guiding and supporting whānau. So, you know, I think there's more options than just the ones that we often think of first off.
And I'm a celebrant as well, and so I've done quite a few weddings, and I've done occasional funeral as well. And actually, to do a funeral, just as to do the service, you don't actually need a qualification. Anyone can turn up and do a service for a funeral, but you do need the right things to be done in terms of the burial and the legalities of that. And so that's where a funeral director, or like those guides in Rotorua that you're talking about, that's where they come in. So, you know, no reason that a family member can't run a service and do that, and then have somebody sort of, you know, take over the legal side of things from there. So there is lots of different options for people, and we've talked a little bit about making your own arrangements and finding funeral directors to do those kind of things. The other question I was thinking, because we talked a little bit about cremation, and I know that that's quite popular in New Zealand, is there an opportunity to be cremated and then buried in a natural cemetery?
Short answer is no. So going back to the core principles of a natural burial, the body is returned to the earth as naturally and sustainably as possible. There are already plenty of options for burying or scattering ashes. You can even do it on your own property. So the natural burial site is being kept for natural burials only.
So in terms of that, following you just said, in terms of your own property, can you get buried on your own property?
As far as burying the body is concerned, actually I was surprised to find out that under the Burial and Cremation Act, which was back in 1964, burial on private land is actually lawful if there's no public cemetery available within 32 kilometres of the place of death.
Random.
I don't know if anybody who's relied on that. Anyway, you still have to meet certain conditions. You still have to notify the district court and so on. But of course, most people are buried in public cemeteries and are run by local councils. Burials also take place in urupa and in church burial grounds. So that act, it is an old act back in '64, and it's under review, and it seems to have been under review forever actually. But the intention is that it will be liberalised.
Yeah.
So watch that space.
There's a listener article by Sally Blundell, 2019, Pushing Up Daisies, all about natural burial. It actually talks about how you can apply to be buried at sea, to be buried on the land out there. I don't think it's easy to get the okay, but there are.
That's one that you loaded on the Facebook site, isn't it?
No.
Oh, that one was impossible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you'd be annoyed if you were 31 kilometres from you'd be probably quite peeved. As you say, that's under review, and you're able to apply to have, you know, lots of different things in that respect.
See that photo of their casket? It's a boat.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I don't know why a coffin club has piqued my interest so much, but it has.
You're gonna love this video, Will.
It's
Yeah,
really funny.
So now I'm just sort of rounding out. How many people are we at the moment in terms of buried in natural cemeteries in New Zealand?
You have got, you did send me
I
an
did,
email with
yeah.
all the different
Cemeteries and how many,
cemeteries.
yeah.
So the newer ones are fewer. And
Often less
do you
than
know how
10.
many, how much
Yeah.
might have?
Well, Hamilton's got hardly any because they're, oh, no, they've been going a couple of years. No,
I think there's
can't
only a
remember the
dozen or
actual-
so there.
Yeah,
But you know, Wellington's the forerunner, 300 there already.
because they were established
And-
first in 2008.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing, I mean, in terms of the fullness of time, you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting that we're doing that in the Bay of Plenty and Tauranga, and that's being investigated and moving forward reasonably shortly, and a beautiful site out the back of Te Puke as well. That is absolutely lovely there. Now, if people want to find out more, because that's how we should finish this, if people are interested and want to find out a little bit more about anything to do with a natural cemetery and a natural burial, what's the port of call? Where do they go? What do they do?
So we'll put out some links on our listing. There's a natural burial site organisation. They were the ones who founded it in New Zealand. So they're a good port of call. We've got our Facebook page, which Wendy has been great
We
at.
didn't show
Oh
our
yes, this
brochure.
is the brochure.
So we
Oh, you've got a brochure.
we
Go.
did this years ago, and on it it doesn't have, it's got the Facebook page, right? But what we really need is an admin person for our Facebook page.
Because Wendy's been doing a sterling job, but she's
well,
ready to pass
haven't.
over the
I'm
reins.
not, yeah. So
Unfortunately, we
that's
haven't
one
got any
reason we
funding, so
haven't
the
gone
person
ahead.
needs to do it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah. So you need an admin. You need an admin person for your Facebook page, which, by the way, I have in front of me. BOP Natural Cemetery. If you search BOP Natural Cemetery on Facebook,
Yes.
it will come up.
Yes.
If you are a social media person, if you're studying that, or if you're just quite into it and you're willing to help, that would be really cool to be able to do that. And these are the kind of things that are important in terms of taking an organization to another level and getting awareness out there. So if you can, I guess, get in touch via the Facebook page, BOP Natural Cemetery. And hey, look, if you're going to be the admin, get in touch and give them some pointers and tell them what you think they could do better. And then you can be the admin and do that.
Definitely. I haven't put much money into it because then I have to deal with all the stuff. I don't mind putting the money in if someone else deals with it.
Cool. Yeah. So you've got an opportunity. Hey, look, thank you very much for chatting, ladies, and shedding a little bit of light on what a natural cemetery is and a natural burial is. And I think in the day and age that we live in the increasingly weird and turbulent world that we are currently in, it's quite nice to think about things returning to just being natural and clean and green and something that friends and family can really enjoy and be a part of.
Thanks, Will. Thanks. Awesome. Good rounding off.
Good stuff.
Cheers.